Today, we're checking out Viticulture World, which is an expansion to the game of viticulture that turns it into a cooperative game. Now, I am a self-proclaimed expert or professional at the game of viticulture. Now, not a professional because I've necessarily won anything, but it's just been a game that I've played for a really long time. I love it. It's one of my favorite games ever. I've played so many rounds of it, had so many different player counts. I just consider it a game that I know really, really well. The first thing you're going to notice when you open the game up is that it actually comes with a new board. Now on this board you can see lots of new stuff in the game. There's a spot for event cards and also new innovation tiles. Also some new spots your workers can go to out on the board, and then another win condition, which is your influence. Probably the most exciting change is the innovation tile, so we're going to start out talking about those. The actions on the main board have descriptions to tell you what they do, but also two ovals below them. This is because it's depending on player count, you can only put 1 or 2 workers on each of those spots during a season. Now remember, this is a cooperative game, so you're going to be working with your teammates, but you're still going to be blocking each other. So if someone draws a grape this turn, you might block that spot from someone else being able to draw a grape. The innovation tiles do two really cool things. The rectangular ones are going to go over and cover up the description of what the actions do, and then make those actions even more powerful. While the oval ones are going to go over to the spots that limit how many workers can go there and basically open it up so as many workers as you want to can go to that action. It's also going to give that spot a bonus reward when you take that action with the trained worker. So each round you're going to flip over 2 of these rectangular and 2 of the oval innovation tiles. Then there's a spot on the board you can send your worker to buy them and then overlay the spots. This, of course, if you haven't figured it out, is a great feeling in a game when you actually put things on the board to make the actions you would normally take even more powerful. Another really big change to the game is the use of the event decks. So every time you play the game, you're going to choose a continent like South America or Africa. You're going to get those event cards out of the box, shuffle them up, and deal out 6, which will correspond to the 6 seasons of the game. Then at the beginning of every year, you're going to flip and reveal one of those event cards. Now these can do tons of different things, kind of depending on which continent, which scenario you're playing. So I don't want to spoil all of them, but the effects can go from, hey, make this spot more powerful, or maybe block this spot to make it a little more difficult. Another really common one is that if you get enough workers on a particular spot, depending on player count, you get some reward. Now, a really common reward is influence. Now, influence is not in the base game of viticulture, so let's talk about that now. In order to win the game, all players have to get to 25 points. Remember, it's cooperative, so all players have to get to 25 points. You all have your individual point trackers, but together you have to get your influence to 10. Now, depending on player count, you might start the game off with a couple influence already given to you, but you're trying to get to 10 influence. So everyone together, 10 influence, everyone individually, 25 victory points. Now the main way to get influence is on those event cards I mentioned earlier, but also there's a spot on the board you can trade in 8 coins and buy an influence. Then finally, if any player can get to 30 points, it actually gives the team 1 extra influence. Another new part of the game that I just mentioned briefly earlier is the idea of trained workers. Now if you're used to the base game of viticulture, training workers means something completely different now. Every player is going to start out with 1 grande worker and then 4 normal workers. You're not going to acquire new workers as the game goes along. Everyone starts with that 1 grande and 4 normal workers. But you see, of those 4 workers, 2 of them are going to be wearing yellow hats and 2 of them are going to be wearing blue hats. The yellow hat workers can only take action spaces on the left side in the summer seasons, and the blue hatted workers can only be on the right side in the winter season. That's really restrictive, so your workers are going to be really stuck. You're going to have 2 here, 2 here, and a grande that can kind of go anywhere. So when you go to the trainer worker spot, you're actually just going to remove a hat. You're going to get to pick a worker and take their hat off. So let's say you take a yellow hat off. Well, now you have 1 yellow worker, 2 blue workers, and 1 any worker that can now be used in any season. It gives you more flexibility with how you use your workers. On top of that, when a trained worker goes to one of those oval innovation tiles we talked about earlier, it will get the reward listed on the tile. A few more small but important changes is that now the wake-up track works a little differently. The bonuses are pretty much the same, but you're going to put your guy on the outside for the spring and then move into the inside and get different bonuses for fall. One last rule change that might seem small but is really important if you want to have a shot of winning the game is that when you place a grande worker into a spot that already contains another player's worker, you get to do a trade with them. You can exchange some cards or money or wine or grapes. So now that I told you some of the main things that Viticulture World does, I'm going to tell you what I think about the game. We're going to start out here with a few positives. So first up, as a cooperative game, it does a really good job of actually making you cooperate. You see, the basic mechanism of viticulture of putting out workers and blocking spots is really going to come up in this game. You're going to have players that say, man, I really need to plant this turn. Well, I really need to plant. Well, how can we work out a way where we both can plant? Okay, if you put your person here, I won't block the spot from you in the next season. So it has a lot of that talking. Then also that I told you, we put that grande worker on a spot that has another person's worker already in it, you can exchange goods. So that really comes up too, where I can't fill this order. I'm 1 grape short. Can you give me a grape here? I can do that. I can also give you the money that you need to take your turn. So it's actually the game that makes the players work together. And those rectangular and oval innovation tiles are really fun. I mean, you get to play a game where during the game you're going to get multiple options of things you're going to buy, put on the board to make spots more powerful. And it's really cool how you normally can't buy every single one of those tiles. Typically you'll be able to buy 1 or 2, maybe 3 if you use your grande workers. And so it's a good decision to say, okay, the rectangular ones make the spots more powerful. Those always seem really like the obvious right choice at first, right? But then those oval ones make spots basically open up to as many people. So at the end of the game, if you're like, oh, we really need to fill a lot of orders, and only one of us can do that turn, I want to fill like 2 and you want to fill 1, you can buy one of those oval ones, put over that spot so you can put multiple workers there. So it ends up being a really good decision of how many, how often, and which ones of those innovation tiles you want to buy. So the basics of the game are pretty fun and interesting, but what I think I'm about to get to right now is going to start to divide my listeners into 2 camps of whether you think the game is really good and love it, or you think it's pretty good but there are some things you wish were better. I'll go ahead and tell you now so you know what camp I fall into. I think it's fun. I think the innovation tiles, the event cards are exciting, but I don't love it anywhere near as much as I love the base game. The thing that holds me back from absolutely loving this cooperative version of Viticulture, I mean, I love the base game. It's one of my favorite games ever. I'd say this one's kind of mid-tier, and that is this game feels very directed to me. The reason I say that is that every year you're going to flip over an event card. These event cards are really powerful and extremely exciting often too. They might say something like, if you get 2 workers, you and your teammate can get a total of 2 workers on the give a tour spot. You're going to get a little card that's going to overlay the board and upgrade part of your board itself. You're also going to get an influence. That influence, if you get to 10 by the end of the game, it's extremely powerful. And then again, doing the event cards is one of the best ways to get influence in the game. Now that's exciting, that's cool, and you should definitely do it. I mean, many of these event cards, not every one, but many of the ones that give you positive things, you should really plan on doing it. It's going to be extremely difficult to end up with enough influence if you don't often do the event cards and pick up the influence from them. There's also going to be the 4 innovation tiles you'll flip over every season, the ones you can choose from to buy and put onto your board, and these kind of range from pretty good to really powerful. Sometimes you'll see one, you'll think, man, that's a great tile. Someone's got to go to that spot and overlay that place. This is going to make that spot, we're going to go there a lot, and it's going to make it so much more powerful. And those 2 things together is what for me makes it a lot less interesting. You see, if there are spots that you really should go to, those innovation tiles, you really are trying to figure out, okay, which one of us can buy this innovation tile on this turn? Or you flip over an event card and you're like, that's a great event card. We both got to put our grande workers onto the spot to get that event card. So we got to get the influence on the bottom, and it also gives us a really good reward. Well, even though that's exciting and it's fun to overlay the tiles and it's exciting to see what the event cards say, it's not an interesting decision. It's something that you should do to respond to what the card says. So I guess interestingly enough, with all this added stuff of replayability, which I get, cooperative games tend to be a little less replayable at their core because you're not going against another human. You have to add in a lot of stuff for replayability. But with all this extra stuff added in, I feel like the strategy goes from being wide open to way more directed. When I play the base game of Viticulture competitively, I feel like there's so much stuff out there for me to do. Every game, you can go in so many different routes. So, okay, with the cards I'm given, how do I want to go about doing this? When you play this game cooperatively, you are going to have, especially the lower player counts, you're going to have a lot of your workers kind of tied up every turn with trying to manage the things you're supposed to manage. Then also you have the hats on the workers, and the hats on the workers I think sounds better than it is. It kind of makes you end up though like, oh, we really need to go to a summer spot, so this worker's gone. I only have one more summer worker at the beginning of the year or the beginning of the game. So this other one, I only have one more spot that's kind of flexible that I can go to. Or again, if the event card calls for your grande worker to be placed somewhere, you maybe really should do that one this turn. It's a really great event card, and it's exciting. You get to overlay your end game payout or end of the turn payout. So instead of getting 1 coin, you're going to get 3. That's super exciting, but you just use your grande worker for that, and now you didn't get to be creative with your grande worker. You just kind of fulfilled the event card. Now, the reason I said this category is going to kind of divide my listener into camps of whether they agree or don't agree is that some people actually kind of like this direction in cooperative games. It's not a bad thing, it's more of a preference. And the reason I know people like them is because there's a lot of successful cooperative games where you flip over cards and you just deal with the events, or you have like random events happening around the board that you kind of have to deal with. So a big part of the game is just kind of doing something and then responding to that event and kind of taking care of that. And often they're very guided. Those sort of games, they're more playing them. You're more playing them for the narrative. You're like, oh, that's so cool, that's interesting. Remember the story we told, or these events happen in this order. And there's nothing wrong with liking them for narrative reasons. It's just, for me, very different than why I like the base game. Another element that I don't love about this game is I feel like it adds a lot of randomness in the order the cards and the tiles flip out. So for example, turn 1, you flip over a couple innovation tiles. There's the ones that help you plant and also draw green cards. That is great. The game's going to be so much easier for you because when you take those actions that you're going to take anyway at the beginning of the game, they're going to be upgraded. Then around turn 3 or 4, you flip over things that help you harvest. You flip over ones that help you make wine. You flip over ones that help you fill order. That's all going to be awesome. The event cards are really similar, especially your first play. We don't know what the cards are. It's very random what's flipped over next. It's not like they would have helped you, but you took that action a turn before. But even once you know it and you shuffle them up and you flip them out, you might in turn 2 say, well, we really need to get this done. Well, wait, we'll flip another event. No, we gotta do it in turn 3. Then you get to turn 4, you flipped over an event that would have helped you in the previous season, but now nobody needs that. It just adds, again, a lot of randomness to the game. Now, is randomness always bad? No. The base game Viticulture has randomness as well, how the cards are dealt out. And is it always bad to lose a cooperative game? No, of course. You want to lose cooperative games sometimes because that's why you're there. You're there for the challenge. I feel like this randomness here, though, is kind of hard to deal with. This might make the game way easier or way harder, and you can't really anticipate what's coming up, and it's kind of hard to mitigate that randomness. One minor gripe that doesn't bother me a ton, but I want to at least mention it because I know it will bother some people, is that the game comes with cards that replace some cards from the base game. They don't give you whole new stacks of cards, which is fine, but there's some cards that don't work in the base game. They're not compatible with the expansion, so they say, hey, just go through, pull these out, put these cards in instead. It's a great idea, but the backs of the cards don't match. The colors are different. I don't know how well you can tell in this picture here, but in person it's pretty obvious to see. Okay, that's one of the cards that got replaced. Maybe it wouldn't matter a ton, but I think if I played it with people a lot and like we had the same group play it a lot, we'd start to learn which of those cards are. So you said, well, one of those 5 cards are up right now. It just kind of is weird, right? So you might have to go through anyway, pull out those cards, put in the normal cards, and then just, take them out again, put them back in when you want to play cooperatively. Now, there are a lot of people who are interested in Viticulture World as a solo game. So it just seems to make sense. They added all these event cards for the cooperative game. They would all transfer to the solo game. So you could play a solo game of this and essentially have like 7 different campaign missions to go through. Now, the base game of Viticulture also has a solo mode, and I've played basically all of it. I love them. There's different missions you can play. A lot of really interesting decisions. You get to really see yourself improve and also kind of tackle the game from different angles because there's a lot of cool stuff with the game. Now, if you're interested in my opinion of the solo mode in particular, I unfortunately really didn't like it. Now, I told you I like the cooperative game. I think it is an enjoyable game. Not my favorite, but I think it's an enjoyable game. The problem is the things that I don't like about it are really magnifying when you play it on solo. So every season, the solo friend is going to block 4 spots. You're also going to flip over an event card. So you're already very limited. You don't have a teammate to discuss like, oh, what spots do you need to go to? What's your biggest priority? What's my biggest priority? That's interesting kind of strategizing. Again, at least like add some cool things you can do. Well, it's a solo opponent. They just block 4 spots. So you're like, well, what's the best thing I can do with the remaining 4 spots this season? But you also flipped over an event card. The event card said you should really go to a spot because again, the rewards are great. You almost have to do many of the event cards. So you're like, well, I really got to do that event card. So I guess I have to do this. There's one of my workers right there. So then you're kind of stuck with, okay, I got one worker for this season and maybe a grande. What left can I do? If it works out for you, if you get events or you get spots blocked in the right order, it's actually very doable. It's just a lot of it kind of depends on the order things flip out in. So because of that, it feels like the few decisions you have in the game, they're basically the interesting things that are left for you to do. Like, okay, when do you want to put people down? When do you want to take them off? Who needs to go to this spot first? What's our turn order? Those are all kind of gone. And I feel like lots of the game is kind of decided for me before I start. And I hope I make the right decisions. I hope I don't do anything dumb that later on I flip over a card and go, oh, I guess that was the wrong decision now. Or maybe it just wasn't in the cards, literally not in the order of the cards or the event tiles as a flip for it to work out this time. Okay, that was a ton of information, but to wrap it all up, do I think Viticulture World is a good game? Yes. Do I think it's anywhere near as good as the original? No, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be as good as the original. You see, it's a game that does a lot of stuff different from the original, and for that reason, I think it still kind of has a cool place where there are times where simply people don't want to play a competitive game. That's cool. You can play Viticulture, and it's an interesting, cool, pretty strategic puzzle to try to solve together. Or maybe even though you love the competitive version, once in a while, this is still fun to pull out because you can do all the cool upgrading at the spots and read off all the event cards. I'd recommend trying out 3 to 4 players first. I thought that might kind of be the sweet spot where there's going to be more interaction where your grande worker is going to go to spots and be able to do more trades with people. Also, you might have more people who can go to things like the innovation tiles so you don't feel as tied up doing those tiles or the event cards. I hope all that was helpful for you. If you're trying to decide whether or not you would like Viticulture World, let me know in the comments down below if you've tried it before and what you think about it. See ya.